Hello and welcome to day 21 of the Halloween Craft Countdown, where I'm releasing a new Cricut craft every day for the whole of October. Now, one of the things I see asked about quite often in Cricut-related Facebook groups is how to work with text in Design Space. So that includes things like how to install fonts to your computer to load in Design Space, how to use those fonts and find them, and also how to fix the weird Design Space bug where it puts random spaces in between all of your fancy letters. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do all of that whilst making a Halloween subway sign design in Design Space. So in this video, you'll learn all there is to know about working with fancy fonts in Design Space, and at the end of it, you will have this fancy looking sign which you can display in your home for Halloween. When you're adding new fonts into Cricut Design Space, you want to install the fonts to your computer or your device before you open up Design Space. And that's because Design Space won't be able to read them on your machine unless you install them before you open it. So using fonts is different to using SVGs. So with a normal SVG file, you would upload it in Design Space itself. But with fonts, that's actually a file which needs to be installed on your particular computer or device, which is why we need to do it first. So once we've installed the fonts and opened up Design Space, when you write some text in Design Space and go to change the font, you'll be able to see all of the new ones that you add. I'm going to be choosing my fonts from a website called creativefabrica.com. I have their monthly subscription, and I think this is a brilliant thing because for a fairly low amount every month, I can download as much as I want from their website. Not only does that include the fonts, which I'm about to show you, but you can also get all of their SVG files and print and cut files and pretty much everything on their site. And there are thousands and thousands of things to choose from. So in my opinion, it is a really good subscription to have. And if you're interested in that, I will put a link in the description of this video so you can check it out. Alright, so I'm going to go into fonts in the top and let that load. And then in the search box, I'm going to type in Halloween. And this is going to search through all the fonts on their website and show me the Halloween ones. So there are loads to choose from. I've got 1,917. So if you look through, you can see all of these Halloween fonts and you can go and choose which ones you want to install. For this subway art, I would recommend installing about 12 different fonts because we're going to want each word to be in a different font, so get a nice selection. And when you install fonts, it can be a little bit tricky to remember the names of the ones you have installed. So perhaps write a list either on your computer in a Word document or just on a piece of paper of the name of the fonts that you install so that when we go to make our subway art, you'll remember which ones you've installed. So I'm going to start with this one called Halloween Nightmare. I quite like all that drippy effect. So to install a font from Creative Fabrica, just click into it. And then if you're not a member of the monthly subscription, you'll be given the option to purchase the font. So they're normally a pretty low fee to be able to do. And once you purchase it, you can use it as many times as you want. I'm on the monthly subscription, so rather than purchase, mine says download. So I can just click that download button and it would download the font straight to my computer. I'm on a Windows computer, so I'll show you how to install fonts on here. If you're on a Mac or a mobile device, so a tablet or a phone, then check out the description of this video. I'll put some links into how to install fonts on your particular device or machine. But on a Windows computer, it's pretty straightforward. You just need to click on the downloaded folder to open it up, or you can go into your downloads to find it. And then you'll generally have two options, an OTF and a TTF. So this is the same font, it just comes in two separate formats. And it doesn't really matter which one you choose, but I like to use the OTF one. So all you need to do is double click on that and it'll bring up this window. Then just click Install. And then it'll install it to your computer, and that font will now be ready to use next time we open up Design Space. So I'm just going to pause this video, go ahead and install a load of funky Halloween fonts, and then we will go into Design Space to create our subway art. I've now installed all of my spooky Halloween fonts and opened up Design Space. To make your subway art, first decide what size you're going to make it. Although you can shift things about to resize it later, it is easiest if you start at the correct size because then you'll know that you're putting all of your words in the correct places. So go into Shapes and choose Square. At the top where it says Size, click on the little padlock icon to open it, and then change the width and height to whatever it is that you're making. So I will do an 8 by 10 inch poster. So here it is. Then I'm going to change the colour in this top box to white. Then you just get the outline of that rectangle. Now we can start adding in the fonts. So I'm going to go into the text tool and type in Happy Halloween. And of course you could do this for any kind of design. It doesn't have to be a Halloween themed poster. You could do whatever you want. But when you've got your font in there, if I zoom in, just double click into it, press Ctrl and A on your keyboard or click and drag to select the font, and then go into the fonts drop down. You can then search the fonts in this box here. So one of the ones I installed was called just Halloween, all on its own. So let's have a little look. Halloween. So this is pulling up quite a lot of my Halloween fonts. Most of them had the name Halloween in them. So these are all the ones that I have just installed. So now I can have a little look through and choose which one I want to use first. So I'll just use that one called Halloween. And you can see that one's a bit smaller, so I can click and drag it to make it big. At the moment, I'm not going to worry about colours. I'm going to just add all my words and phrases in first, and then have a little think about colours afterwards. So let's try another one. Spooky. And then by default, it will load in that same font again, but we want to use a different one. Oops. Go into there, and it's also remembered that I searched for Halloween, which is nice. So let's have a little look. What does that one look like? Spooky. There we go. That looks cool. Alright, what else have I got in here? Let's go for... Oops, got my caps locks on wrong there. Trick or treat. And then I will center that. And you'll see now it's got this really big gap between the two lines, which looks a bit weird. You can fix that by changing the line space in this box. If I change it to 0.6, actually I have to go down quite a lot more than that apparently. Let's put 0. So that the lower the number in that you put, the closer your words will get to each other. -3. Oh. There we are, that looks better. So now let's change this font. Maybe that one. Okay, now they're a bit too close. So let's go -2 on that line space. No. Okay, 0 works well. I'll move that one over here. So at the minute, I'm only kind of putting things roughly in place. I can play about with the exact positioning when I'm finished. Now for the next one, I'm going to do something that goes all the way along. And let's see, what shall I go for? Haunting. Oops, again, I've got my caps locks on the wrong way. Haunting. This time I'm going to choose a script font. So let's have a look. Maybe that one. And what Design Space does when you use script fonts or handwriting fonts is it puts all of these massive gaps between the letters, and this looks really messy. We don't want it to end up like this. So what you can do to fix it is move it off of the base that you made to make things a bit easier so it's not going to get in the way, and then right click on the word and press ungroup. And now all of these letters are their own separate layers, which means I can click and drag them so that they're touching like they're supposed to. So just take your time and go through and position these so that they look a little bit neater. And it might be that not every letter touches, so you see my T and my I aren't touching, but generally that looks much better than it did before. When you're finished, select the whole thing by clicking and dragging around the word, and then down the bottom press weld, and that will join it all together. So now I can zoom out a bit, put this back on, and that now fits quite nicely, and it looks much neater without those massive gaps in it. I want to show you how to use character glyphs. So that's when you use the swirls that go on the beginning or ends of letters, or when a font gives you alternates for a particular letter. So to do that, I will add in my phrase, and then I'll choose a font that I know has glyphs. So this one is called Angel Heart. So by default, Design Space doesn't let you find the glyphs very easily. So what you can do on a Windows computer is go into your files and then click into type map into the box and then click into character map. You can then choose your font in the drop down, so this one's Angel Heart, and then in this character set box make sure it's set to Unicode, and then in the group by select the drop down to Unicode subrange. And then you get this extra little box pop up, and you want to scroll down until you see one that says private use characters. And that means it's pieces of the font that only exist within this particular font. So for this one, Angel Heart, that means all of these fancy letters. So I've got my W and I want to add a little swirl to that, so I can have a look through and I can see that I've got a W there with a little swirl. So I can double click on that one, and then that adds it into this box here. So then I can click copy, go back into Design Space, and then press Ctrl and V on my keyboard to paste. And in the little box that Design Space pops up, the one that you type in, you won't see it. It will just look like a little square, but that's okay because we can see by looking in the main text box underneath that it has inserted that fancy W for me. I'll do the same thing on the E. So I can see there is an E with a swirl on the end. So let's copy that one, go into Design Space and paste it in. I think I just clicked paste twice. There we go. So now I have those fancy letters. I just need to do the same thing where I move these all closer because it is a script font. So I've ungrouped them. I'm just going to zoom in and then move all of these letters into the correct position. I'm just doing this a bit roughly so they're not lining up perfect, but that is much better. And now I can weld them. Okay, so now I can add this, and I think I will put it in the gap there. Okay, so now I've got just a little bit left on my design, so just want to go along the bottom. See, when I previewed this font it looked really cool because it's got all these pictures, but if you actually look, that's just going to be so small, my Cricut's not going to be able to deal with it. So unfortunately, I don't think that font is going to work. I'll just make that smaller, add it in the space I've got left. Okay, cool. So if I zoom out now to see the whole thing, that is looking pretty darn good. So I do just need to play about with the positioning. What you can do to make sure all of your borders line up is to draw another shape and make it slightly smaller than your original one. So my original one was 8 by 10. So if I make this maybe half an inch smaller on each side, so 7.5 wide and then 9.5 tall. And then Select this layer, press Ctrl on my keyboard and choose the square at the bottom. Go into Align and then Center to put that grey circle directly in the middle. I'm then going to drag it all the way down so it just sits above that white one, and then I'll make that white as well. And I'm just going to use this as a little borderline to get my fonts lining up so that they all look the same, because it just looks a bit neater if everything is aligned to the same point on each side. So for this one, I'm making the Y and the S just line up against that. So now you're really just getting everything in the exact position you want to keep it in. So you can play about with the sizes and the positioning and just neaten it up so that it is looking really good. And then when you're happy with the positioning of everything, just hide that border we put on the inside by clicking the eye icon next to the layer in the Layers panel. So now have a little look and see if there's anything you've got that needs to be filled in. So I do have a couple of little holes that could maybe do with some extra text. So just some really little words to go in there. And again, I'm going to choose some different fonts. And I'll turn my borderline back on by clicking the eye again. And then I've still got that little gap. I'm not sure I can think of any teeny tiny word to go in there. Maybe just a little image instead. Ooh, hat? No, bat. Okay, let's just put a little bat in that gap. Alright, so let's hide that borderline, zoom out, and I'm really happy with how that's looking. So before I do anything else, I'm just going to save this because it's been a while. In fact, I haven't saved it yet, which is not ideal. So now that's saved, so I know I'm not going to lose all of that work. Now I can think about changing the colours. So I don't want to choose too many colours. I think I'll just go for a few Halloweeny things. So I've got a purple, and I'll do a few different layers in that same purple. And then let's go for an orange. I guess the word pumpkins should be orange. And then let's go Creep It Real in orange. I'm going to keep some of them black, so I'll keep the bat black and October 31st and the word spiders, I think, but spooky. What can that be? Maybe a deep red or perk up that blood splatter. So let's do the word blue, boo, in red, and the witch, please. Alright, so that was my colours. That was pretty easy. One thing I've noticed on this spooky font is that it's got these little bits taken out of it. You see where it's got the cut lines, and my Cricut will struggle to cut that out. There'll be just weird cuts in the middle of the letters. So to fix that, I've selected the layer and I'm going to go down to the bottom and press Weld. And now I can click on the word again and go into the contour button. And when that's loaded, just zoom in. I'm going to click all of those little bits to remove them. Alright, there we go. That is fine. So now if I was to cut this with my Cricut machine now, if I just click Make It, it's going to put everything into completely different positions. So all that hard work we did is just gone. What I actually want to do if I'm cutting this with vinyl is to keep all of the similar colours in the same place. To do that, select all of the layers of a particular colour. So I'll start with purple. So I've clicked one of them, press Ctrl and then click on another one and then another one. So that's all three of my purple layers selected. You can also do it in the Layers panel by clicking one of them and again holding Ctrl or Shift on your keyboard and choosing the other ones. When you've selected all of one colour, press the Attach button down the bottom. Then do the same for all of the other colours. And now when I click Make It, when it cuts out the different colours, it's got them in the correct position, which is going to make positioning everything on your sign so much easier because you'll have everything correctly lined up, especially when there's so many different parts of the design. This is a really handy way to make it easier. It does use up more vinyl because obviously you've got all these spaces in between where all the other words are fill in, but the amount of time it will save you would definitely make it worth it. Now you probably don't want to cut the main rectangle, as you'll probably be doing this in vinyl and then sticking it onto an existing sign. So if that's the case, just find the square in the layers panel and click the eye icon next to it. And now when you go to make it, it's not going to cut out that white rectangle. One other thing you can do rather than cut this out of vinyl is you could print it on your computer printer and then get your Cricut to cut that rectangle around the edge, and then you could just stick it in a frame without having to worry about all the different colours of vinyl and getting it all lined up and everything like that. So to do that, turn the square back on, and then I'm going to select everything by dragging a box around it, and then down the bottom of the layers panel hit flatten, and that has turned everything onto one layer. And it now says Cut Print in the Layers panel, which means now this is something that will print on your computer printer, and then Design Space will cut that rectangle around the edge. So you don't worry that you can't see the edge at the minute when you click off of it. Design Space does know it's there, and that's the bit it will cut. So because we've got that rectangle behind it, it's not going to try and cut out each individual letter. It will just print the whole thing and then cut around the edge. However, one thing to note is that I've got this warning triangle in my layers panel, and that's because this is now too big for print and cut. So print and cut does have a limit. I think the maximum height is like 9.75 inches or something. So I will have to make this a bit smaller. So let's go 7 inches wide. No, that's, oh, I think the maximum width is 6 point something. Okay, so now that will fit 6.5 by 8.125. I've lost that warning triangle, which means I can now click Make It and follow the steps to print then cut. If you've never done print then cut before, I do have a separate video on how to do that, including how best to set your printer settings and how to actually do the print and cut in your Cricut machine. So I'll drop a link to that in the description of this video. But for now, I'm just going to go back over here and undo this to get all of my layers back. So just undo all of that. Okay, so I've undone the flatten, so now all my layers are back. I'm going to save it again so that I've got all the colours. And then this would be ready for me to either cut out from vinyl and then stick onto a canvas or a frame or some glass or whatever it is I want to add it to, or I could flatten it again and print then cut it. So this was a bit on the longer side, but I hope it has taught you a few things about using different fonts in Design Space. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for loads more Cricut Design Space tutorials and Cricut projects. I've been releasing a brand new Halloween craft every day for the whole of October, so be sure to check those out if Halloween crafts is what you're into. Thank you for watching.